Like most mornings on this trip, I'm up before the sun and I'm walking around like a zombie, desperately in search of my first cup of coffee. Little did I know this bright neon blue light you see here was going to be the focus of our morning outing. But more on that in a minute. I really need that cup of coffee and to get some breakfast in me. And well, to maybe take in this view a little bit too. Even though we are birding this morning, the day is mostly a transit day to get into position for tomorrow, where we're out to see 3 of the most iconic species of the entire trip. But beautiful sunrises like this are about to go away, and the weather is going to make seeing these 3 almost impossible. But before we get bogged down in the rain, let's go back to that bright blue neon light, which is actually this contraption. It's a moth trap, and that bright blue light stays on overnight, which brings in the moths, which then in turn brings in the birds for breakfast in the morning. And first to the feast are these turquoise jays. Next to feed on the moth buffet was this strong-billed wood creeper. And I'm not a bug guy by any means, but I really felt bad for this moth. Jeez, what a brute. And as the morning went on, the moth trap attracted more and more species. And even though a lot of these are considered common species for the cloud forest, I still couldn't get over the fact that they just kept flying in over and over again. It's always something new. Even some of the heavy hitters showed up. And though it never came down to the fruit feeder or the moth trap, it was still cool seeing this barred hawk fly overhead. But what did come down and land close to us was this bird. And you know it's a big deal when the guide gets excited about it. It is a white-faced numbird, and it is a rarity for it to show up in this part of the cloud forest. In fact, it ended up being the rarest bird we would see for the entire trip. The rest of the day was spent in transit as we left the Eastern Valley, went back through Quito, and ended up in the West Andes at the Guanga Lodge, which would set the stage for the big 3 of tomorrow. But overnight, the weather turned for the worse. But fortunately, it's not all bad news. The lodge has a covered bird blind, so we went down there to see if anything was salvageable for the morning session. And just like yesterday, look who was first in. These turquoise jays are early risers. And what you're seeing there on the left with that white sheet is just like yesterday as well. It's a moth trap, and this mountain cacique wastes no time helping itself to some breakfast. And we all know that birds don't particularly like the rain, but sometimes a good meal is too hard to pass up, even in bad conditions. And even though the birds didn't enjoy it, I was enjoying myself shooting this great slow-mo video. The way the light was, the rain was perfectly backlit, and I thought it made for some really good, moody photos. The lodge also had a covered hummingbird garden, so we made our way over there. Our time here didn't last long, though. The rain lightened up slightly, and our guide promptly got us on the trail to go see one of our big targets for the day, the Gray-breasted Mountain Toucan, and it would only be visible during one of these windows where the rain had lightened up. After a short hike, we reached the spot where the local guides tried to tempt the toucans in with some of their favorite snacks. And now the waiting game begins. In these horrible conditions, we wait and see if any of the toucans will fly in and take the bait. After 45 minutes, a local guide spots 4 of them up the side of the hill. I rush over and point my camera, but it's too late. They've already vanished back into the mist and rain. About 20 minutes later, though, we heard them very audibly close by, and then... There it was. The toucan had come in. I loved the way that the toucan looked at us and acknowledged that we were there, but was also still really cautious, and you could tell the bird was skittish. And in our short moment with this bird, we all got some spectacular photos. I got some good video clips, and eventually it flew and landed in a nearby tree before taking off into the distance, ending the show. It's a glorious bird. After we ate lunch, we came back outside to this, and it put into serious doubt whether we were going to be able to see the 2 other target species for the day, the Torrent Duck and the white-capped dipper. The hummingbirds were still active though, so we kept ourselves entertained with them throughout the afternoon while we waited and hoped for another break in the weather. But as the afternoon went along, the weather never really improved. Our guide again made the tough call that if we wanted to see these last 2 birds, we were going to have to brave the elements and the horrible trails and just go for it in the weather.
Oh boy, I didn't think I was on the storm chase vacation.
We eventually made our way to the river where we were hoping to see our last 2 species. We walked cautiously as we looked for any openings that gave us a good view. And trust me when I say, you would not want to slip and go in the drink here.
Whoa, I got you.
Our guide suddenly called for us to look at the rapids. I pointed my camera in the area I thought he was talking about, but I didn't see anything at first. But then, this guy popped up. It turned out there were 2 torrent ducks there, and I was mostly in disbelief. What were these guys doing here in these rapids in the horrible rain? But that's what this species does. They're very strong swimmers and even stronger divers, and going up through all these rapids the way they are here is actually how they feed. The pair kept moving upstream and then eventually would just plop themselves back into the raging rapids. It was so bizarre. We eventually got upstream of the ducks, and after I took these shots, something out of the corner of my eye caught my attention. I pointed my camera and took this. Sure enough, it was our 3rd target bird of the day, the white-capped dipper. I'm just like any other birder. I get all giddy when I see a dipper too, and seeing this one was particularly impressive because there's only 2 species of dippers in the entire continent of South America, this one sticking to these high-flowing rivers in the Andes. And it looked like this dipper was going to end its day the same way we were, standing in the middle of the forest in the pouring rain, completely soaked. Coming up on the series finale, we go up and I see my highest elevation birds ever. We find one more unique hummingbird species, and an owl joins us briefly for our dinner reservation.